Hello, everyone. This is Patrick from ApplyChat Healthcare. Welcome to our latest ApplyChat Healthcare podcast as part of our regular webinar series on nurse and healthcare recruitment topics and healthcare human resource matters generally. To watch our webinar videos and view the presentation notes, you can find the link to our YouTube page in the podcast notes. You can also find all of our free resources and learn how ApplyChat Healthcare finds more qualified nurse applicants for our healthcare clients by visiting us at applychathealthcare.com.
Hi everybody, welcome along to another ApplyChat Healthcare webinar. I'm so excited that you can all join us today. And we've got a good one in store for you. We're going to be talking about our work with our clients last year and what that means for you this year. We really want to bring our expertise as an agency into your present so that you can make 2023 the most productive, the most successful year in your nurse recruitment. And before we get started, I'd love to connect with you all a little bit and find out where everybody is joining from. So please put in the chat, let us know where in the world are you. I know that we've got viewers in the UK, we've got viewers in Canada and across the States, and it'd be great to know what city or state are you joining from. It always amazes me how many people that you can reach these days and how many countries can go into one space and connect. And if you're in the mood for networking, why not put your LinkedIn link in the chat as well, and you can make some new connections in the healthcare recruiting space. We're in a very challenging area and it's a challenging time. So I found that for me particularly, meeting other business owners, other recruiters, other decision makers has been a major help in doing that. So we'd love to know where you're from and to learn a little bit more about you. So before we jump into the webinar, our 5 stages to more RN hires after placing 251 nurses in 2022. I'm going to hand it over to Patrick, who is with us, and he is going to talk a little bit more about what we do and what sort of change we make. So Patrick, I'm going to pass it over to you, and then Patrick will pass it back, and we'll start the webinar.
That sounds good. Thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. Well, Adam, you mentioned the problem, and we know there are about 3 million RNs in the USA and about 200,000 RN vacancies every year. And in Canada, that's about 300,000 RNs at work and a need for another 60,000 more. So, and filling vacancies with travel nurses costs $130,000 per RN per year, and that's simply not sustainable, obviously, for any healthcare organization. An added challenge is that most nurses are not actively looking for a new job or checking the job boards for new opportunities. So employers really need to go beyond talking to job hunters and get in front of the right people. Otherwise, you'll keep bleeding money from travel nurses, your staff nurses will burn out, and your patients will be impacted. So at ApplyChat Healthcare, we're helping our clients reduce agency fees and boost nurse headcount with a 3-step solution, which includes sourcing passive candidates from outside of the job boards, screening every candidate to ensure they're qualified for our clients, and following up with every candidate to keep them engaged and excited about the opportunity. Now, as our webinar title points out, last year we placed 251 nurses in 24 states in the US and Canadian provinces. For example, we've helped Overlake Hospital in Bellevue, Washington hire 27 permanent RNs so far, and that would cost over $4.5 million annually to fill with travel nurses. So I invite everyone to visit my online business card. I'll put the link in the chat and it's on the screen, and you can find out more about how we do this, and you can also access all of our free resources there as well. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick. And be sure to connect with Patrick if you're interested in that. So jumping into it, as I said, our motivation for sharing this is because in this space, there exists the providers of healthcare, which is most of our viewers. And then you have the providers of service, which would be travel agencies or RPOs or recruitment advertising agencies, job boards, everything that comes in as a vendor and helps you make more RN hires. And we want to give you the insight from that side of the fence so that you can prosper more this year. And often there's more efficiencies on the agency side, they're often smaller organizations. It's easier to make changes. And because I think last year we worked in some way with 49 different clients, we're able to give you an insight and a perspective that is much broader than your region or the area that you're focused on. And the reason I think this is important because it's a really tough time out there. So we went through COVID. The nursing shortage didn't get any easier. Went through that kind of post-COVID transition in 21, 22 to where we are now, where spending was still up, stimulus money was coming through from the government, and a lot of organizations were able to throw that government funding at nurse recruitment, until where we are now, where people are afraid of a recession. A lot of our clients are having their recruitment budgets cut, and it's a tricky time. And you can see here that hospitals are cutting jobs. So Kaiser Permanente closed out a net loss of nearly $4.5 billion last year. And if your healthcare organization is the average, it probably made a loss in 2022 as well. So I think this is something that we feel the effects of in healthcare recruitment. If you think of a river and a raft, we're often the raft that gets pushed about and gets blown down the river and is having to adapt to changes in the system without being able to affect them much. You can see here that profitability of hospital systems is down. And I think it's important for us to recognize that we cannot really control a hospital's profitability. And once we recognize that, we can better focus on what we can control, which is our recruitment process, how we do things, how we make them better. So I want the message for this year to be, don't redo dysfunctional. If things have been tough the past year or two, it's important to use that pain as a growing experience to do things better next time. If you just do the same thing that didn't work last year, you're going to be broken this year. And sometimes things have to be broken to be reborn stronger and better. So that's why we're coming here with a new way of thinking for a lot of you on 5 different areas. And I really want you to come with this with an open mind and to reflect on what you can do in your organization to implement these 5 steps. So we made a document for our clients that outlined our steps, and I'll quickly highlight them now. And at the end, if you stay to the end, we'll share this document with you. So from our perspective and the work that we do for our clients, there are 5 crucial stages. The first is the candidate's application. How do you get them to apply? The second is how do you get them to respond once they've applied? The third is how do you get your managers to actually book an interview and do the interview and move it forward in a productive way? Number 4, how do you get them to show up to the interview? It's a pain, especially if you're doing CNAs, that, and we've spoken to some organizations that most people who book an interview don't even show up. That's how difficult things are. So how do you actually get them to attend that interview? And then once you've offered them a position, how do you get them to accept the offer? We've had some experiences where over half of the offers made are rejected by the candidates. And at that stage, so much work's been done, it's a waste to not have everything on point, 100% effective for providing that offer or negotiating with that candidate. So this is our outline, and I'm going to talk through each one in turn. The first one, in many ways, is the most important. It's the top of the funnel in marketing speak. And that essentially means that your application process is shaped like a funnel where you have most people come in at the start on the top, and then some drop out, some book an interview, some aren't qualified, and then at the bottom of the funnel you have the hires, and it's a more narrow pool than at the start. So filling your candidate pipeline consistently over time is crucial. And whenever you have your meetings, I encourage you to separate them into these different chunks. The first one, how many candidates did we get this week? How many candidates did we get last week, last month, and how does it compare? And for us, we've pinpointed 3 simple ways to think about your job advertising. The first one is the offer. So what do you, as an organization, bring to the table for a nurse who's looking for a new job? And what does your job bring to the table that would be better than their current one? That is something that needs to be changed institutionally. It could be the pay rate, it could be the benefits package, it could be your prestige as an organization. The second one are your ads. What do you say in your job ads? Where do you put your job ads? How do you promote your job ads with different vendors? And then the third is the audience. So how narrow is the specialty that you're recruiting for? How tight is the market? And where are candidates seeing those ads? Is it on a billboard while they're zooming down the motorway, or is it on a mobile phone while they're kicked back on the sofa? I want to share an example of a client we work with. They're called Thrive Skilled Pediatric Care, and they're a home care provider, and they made 84 RN LPN hires with us last year. And the key thing to note about Thrive, and they'll be the first to admit it, is their main selling point isn't what people jump to first, like pay. It's the culture of the organization and the service they provide, and how the nurses are able to relate to each other and their employer and the employer brand. And this as an offer, being proud of that offer is very useful and key to their message, because they're able to attract exactly the type of nurse who would prioritize culture over pay. And in doing so, they've got a stronger offer because of it. So whenever it comes to your offer, it's important to think about, what do you bring to the table? Sometimes if we ask recruiters this question, they're left scratching their heads and they don't know. If you can't name 3 reasons why a happily employed nurse would quit their job and come to work for you, that's something that you need to fix. And it has to be specific, and it has to be something that will resonate and be important to nurses out there. What do you bring to the table? So amongst our clients, there's so many different things. It could be, we pay $60 an hour, and that's 20% over our market average, or we don't ask nurses to work every other weekend, it's only once every couple of months. It can be anything as long as it's better, and your organization does have an offer, even if you haven't discovered it yet, because you have nurses working there and you're still around in this difficult market. So it's about putting your heads together and having a brainstorming session within the recruitment team to think about, why have people said they applied to us? Why have people said that they wanted to be hired? And then also asking your candidates, well, what is the reason that you applied? So whenever you get onto the phone with that nurse, first question, really curious to know, what made you interested in applying to the job? If you can note down those reasons, then you're not just making it up, you're actually taking it from their mouths and then simply repeating it. From the horse's mouth, that was the the saying that I wanted to get there. So whenever it comes to offer, the final thing to think about is your offer doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you're in Toronto, it's not really a major selling point to say work in this exciting city, work in Toronto if you're recruiting locally, because everyone else is in Toronto. It's all relative. If you're in a market for Canada again where pay is unionized, you have to think again, what about our facilities or what about our culture makes us special? So it's all relative when it comes to what you're offering, because the nurse is going to ask, what do they offer compared to my current employer or the next best choice? So once you've considered what your offer is, and once you've defined it in clear, specific terms, the next step is actually advertising that offer. How are you communicating it specifically? Is the application experience candidate-centric? And where are you putting your ads? So I'm going to share a stock example for a made-up organization that we've created to raise this point. And I think where a lot of organizations fall down is they don't advertise their jobs. So what does that mean? Well, there's a difference between advertising and displaying. It's the difference between me presenting a webinar and me sending you the slides. Whenever you're advertising, you're trying to convince someone to take an action after reading it. It's like selling, but in words. And I think where a lot of providers fall down is whenever they're promoting their positions on Indeed, for example, at the top, they put in the description of the job. So for example, not picking on anyone, I just found this randomly. You don't want to define what the job is in the very first paragraph because they don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of time for you yet, and you really need to win their attention. So at the top of the job ads, and if it says put in a job description, just put in an advertising section at the top. You should be talking about what's in it for them and what is this job actually going to do for their lives. So jumping back to this example, cardiac hospital that's got an accolade, #1 in the nation. The pay was above average, earn 40 to 75 per hour and get comprehensive benefits. And then there are 8 more reasons. So this reads like a constant reinforcement of the value of the provider and a constant reinforcement of the reasons that they're looking for a job anyway. So it could be that they're not getting competitive pay. We're saying earn X to Y, highly competitive pay. It could be that they're not feeling appreciated with their hard work. And then we put in the part about the vacation. So whenever it comes to job advertising, make sure you're actually advertising something. And the best way to enable this is to think about being candidate centric. That means that the ad is written with the reader in mind and making the reader take a specific action. So it's not about you. It's not about saying we are hiring for an ICU RN. It's about saying, are you an ICU RN who wants $40 to $75 an hour, who wants a change of scenery, who wants a $20,000 sign-on bonus? Apply now. We have a campaign ongoing in Alaska, and they have a a sign-on bonus of $50,000. And that, as an offer, we've found to be useful for nurses who are already in Alaska, because in that market, a lot of people have went there for the higher wage, and it's something that they would do for a few years. So that bonus is relevant to them because they're interested in earning more, and it's not going to change their living situation too drastically. And it's working in the context of where it's being advertised. The last point for the ads is, what do they see when they Google your organization? What's your Glassdoor rating, and what are you doing to improve it? So this is called reputation management, where you look at review sites like Glassdoor and you think, how can I improve based on what people have written, and how can I improve what new nurses see? Often the best way to improve your Glassdoor is to simply ask for reviews from your current staff. Because the thing about this site is a lot of reviews come from former staff who left for a reason and are going to be sharing that reason. So you want to balance that out with people who are working with you currently. It's not about controlling the message saying you must write something good. It's about bringing balance. And people that are currently employed with you are more likely to share the positive sides. So make an effort working with your hiring managers to ask nurses for their opinions on Glassdoor. The third part for the ads would be the audience. So we've found that this is something that we need to communicate whenever we are meeting new potential clients, because in the past we said you can get 16 hires for this amount of money, and we said that a lot of organizations that were varied, and some of them were quite remote, and it was not really the same as if they were in a large city. And that's because the population is smaller, so the cost per hire is going to be larger. So whatever your expectations are, be it from management or to your team, they should be based on the size of your audience, and that's controlled by the geography you're in and then the qualifications of the nurses. Finally, for this part, you want to think about where your ads are going. So are you using Indeed? Are you using Glassdoor? Are you using something else? We've seen that cold sourcing, so mapping out the candidates in the area, acquiring their LinkedIn profile, their Facebook profile, their phone number, has worked pretty well for our clients that are more remote. If you're in a large city, then we've found that social media advertisements are good because it's a dense population and you're able to get a lot of nurses in your audience, but on a platform where there's not loads of competition in terms of nurse recruitment. So to summarize, whenever it comes to getting candidates, if you're not getting enough, think about these three things. If you want to get more as well, think about your offer, think about your ads and your audience. If you have any questions or anything you want to say, feel free to put them in the chat and Patrick will get back to you. The second stage is often that heartbreaking moment where you get a great application and then they never respond to you. They never text you back. And it can feel like a real wasted opportunity because you've imagined how that nurse, the resume, would have fitted into the role that you're fitting and the department that needs to hire them. So as a vendor, we are actually supplying those candidates. So often that's on us. We need to screen effectively for interest, but also you should look at how many recruiters you have allocated to the candidates and figure out, is that enough to handle the quantity of people that are being sent? there are a few high-level KPIs to stick to, and I was on a call with about 40 other staffing agency owners yesterday, and one of the points was, how do we get our clients to respond to the candidates that we submit with more speed? We advise our clients very strongly to engage everyone when they apply through a phone call, a text, and an email. A phone call, a text, and an email. And we've found that phone calls are the best, and then texts, and then emails. But if you're not doing all three, I think a good question would be, why are you not doing all three? If it's possible to have this wide coverage and nurse recruitment is a priority, then you might want to look back on your recruiters. Can your recruiters handle the quantity? Are you being allocated sufficient resources to cover all the candidates submitted? We also advise, where possible, to reach out on 4 occasions. So that's not call them 4 times consecutively and then leave. That would be spread across a week, just so you make sure that you're able to catch everybody that's interested. After 4 occasions, we've found that it's best to put them onto a more automated outreach, where you can use an email software, you can use your ATS to send them content over a long period of time. So the next point I'm going to move on to would be submissions getting booked for a hiring manager interview. At this point, though, I'm going to bring in Patrick, who has a bit of insight from some of our networking discussions we've been hosting.
Sure. Yeah. So just yesterday, we had the second call of our new healthcare recruitment leaders exchange. And this is a new network. We have about 50 director and higher level talent acquisition and HR leaders signed up on that network. And we're going to have monthly calls. And we did have just our second call yesterday. And it was interesting on this point because they did spend some time talking about the relationship between talent acquisition and hiring managers and how important that is. And just as a couple of examples that they mentioned, for example, before talent acquisition does a whole bunch of work on this, is this a real posting for external candidates, or is the manager likely to end up hiring in-house? So if you have an effective relationship, you can maybe understand that better before you launch into doing a bunch of work on that requisition. And then another example was, do we already have finance approval in place to fill this, or are we going to do a bunch of work and then find out we have to put a hold on it? Those were just a couple of examples of the importance of that talent acquisition and hiring manager relationship. I'll also share that we had a recent webinar on this topic, and you can view that and all of our past webinars in the link I shared earlier. And I'm also going to pop into the chat the link to sign up for the healthcare recruitment leaders exchange. So if anyone on the call or any of your colleagues might fit for this, director and higher level in talent acquisition, feel free to check it out.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'd love to see you there. And as Patrick said, we've put out the content on this in terms of the relationship to hiring managers. We have a webinar. I think we have a newsletter as well.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So no excuses to get this one wrong, because we've shared how to do it, and it wasn't just coming from us; it was coming from a real expert in that area.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
What I got most from it was there needs to be an equal relationship between recruiters and hiring managers. I think where the breakdown occurred in some of our experiences last year was hiring managers were often said to be not prioritizing the applications. And the reason was because they have 100 other things to do, managing a busy department. And for that reason, recruitment wasn't a priority. I think in this instance, personally, the word priority isn't very helpful, because nurse recruitment really is a necessity for these managers and for organizations. And it's easy for someone to say it's not a priority and then list things that are crucial to the ongoing of the department, like making sure that all the nurses are performing well, managing those nurses, and in doing so relegate the non-priority, which is interviewing candidates, to a secondary level. And I think that's a little bit harmful. I'm not saying that the other tasks aren't important, because they definitely are, but nurse recruitment is extremely important. So how do you get around that? Because it's hard to argue with a nurse hiring manager, especially when a lot of the managers are senior people. They've been doing this 15, 20 years, and a lot of boots on the ground recruiters are more junior, in the role for 1 to 5 years, for example, and then people move up to management positions. So as the leader in the department, it is kind of your responsibility to provide your team with the support they need on this. And on our webinar, we heard that to foster a positive equal relationship, a service level agreement that says, here's when you're expected to respond to the candidates, here's the method, here's how you let us know when interviews are available to be booked. When you can write that down on an agreement, it becomes official. And if the managers are saying that it wasn't a priority at the time, you can say, well, it was a priority whenever we made this agreement, and we considered your other workload. How can we best overcome this challenge and get back to what we hoped to achieve whenever we made the agreement, which was effective collaboration? Now, you can damage your relationship with hiring managers in a few ways. The major one is whenever the candidates don't show up, and that wastes their time, and that admittedly makes it less of an equal relationship, because they begin to see the work you're doing as a little bit less reliable than the work they're doing. So you have to present what your organization offers to the candidate on the phone as a recruiter in an attractive way. It shouldn't just be a 10-point screening call. It should be a conversation where you're discovering what they want and you're presenting something at your organization that will give them that. You're asking them questions about their history and qualifications, and you're actively listening and responding to them. So if they said, I'm originally from California, but I moved to New York to live with my husband. That's why there's a little gap in my resume, and I've been here 2 years and I was in California 2 years. Whenever they open up like that, don't just say, okay, cool, and move on to the next question, because they're giving you a golden opportunity to form a connection and to relate to the nurse. And if you can talk to them about their personal life, or you can mention the benefits of living in New York versus California, then they'll start to like you more. And if someone likes you more, then they're less likely to let you down. Not always, but in this instance, yes. So if you can do that, and if you make sure they're qualified at the same time, you don't want to send people that will waste hiring managers' time, then you could foster a better respect from hiring managers for what you're doing. Finally, it should be interesting and engaging to them. So I think it comes back to not doing that checklist, and yes, doing the engagement two-way conversation that explores their comments and brings them on a journey with you. Stage 4, our penultimate stage, is getting those people to attend their interviews. As I mentioned, with CNAs, very difficult last year for a lot of our clients. Maybe less so with nursing, but still a challenge. And I like to think of a saying. There's a song, "Grandma got run over by a reindeer," and essentially that means if someone doesn't show up for an interview, you shouldn't first assume that they're not interested and discount them forever. There should be that peace in your mentality where you allow for a second chance and you listen to their reason. So, grandma got run over by a reindeer brings it to absurdity, but there's a million different things that could have happened to them. And it's important to first listen to why they're not able to come and then make a decision on if you want to offer them a second interview. To get them to show up, people should be sent reminders. So that could be over email or text. And they should be engaged pre-interview. So sent content to do with the hospital, to do with the working culture. You can make a simple 3 to 4 emails and finish all of them with looking forward to seeing you at location, time, and then send that as a sequence to nurses so that whenever they are going through their week preparing, they are constantly built more towards the interview. The work doesn't really stop once they've said yes. You have to give them reasons to show up in this market. Make it clear what they do upon arrival. You don't want them showing up and then leaving because they don't know where to park or they can't find their interviewer. And again, on the hiring manager side, it should be arranged quickly. So after we submit a candidate, we ask the client to reach out 24 hours, then try and book an interview for the next week with the hiring manager. If they reach out in 72 hours and then book an interview in 2 weeks, the time that's elapsed is going to be quite damaging for the likelihood of a nurse showing up. Every day that passes makes their likelihood of showing up a little bit lower. So the last point is, how do you get people who are offered the position to accept it? Often the most painful level of dropout is when someone's came so far, you've invested so much time in them, and they leave. So at this point, we identified a few things. First of all, everyone should be aware of what that hiring manager's selection criteria is. As I mentioned before, there needs to be clear communication and equal relationship with the managers. So you don't want them interviewing someone and then rejecting them because they don't have an attitude that gels well with that manager. You want to explore, well, what sort of attitude are you looking for? And then you have a little bit of room for negotiation of that manager as to what kind of person they will accept. Some managers are very picky and they don't prioritize, there's that word again, your need to fill your open jobs. And if things like character clashes are getting in the way, then it's crucial to understand what those character clashes would be so that you can attempt to change the hiring manager's mind or change how you screen people, but preferably the former. The candidates need to come across well at the interview, so helping them prepare is going to help you get the hire. If you have an email that says, here's some tips and tricks to how to prepare for an interview with us, they'll really appreciate that and it'll be useful and they'll come across better and they'll be more likely to get hired. And then the final point is being open to negotiation with the candidate. So I know some systems can't negotiate the terms of the job offer. Some can. If you're in the latter group, it's important to not have the door shut to the candidate once they say no. So it's about going back to them to discover why they said no. And if it's kind of like a superficial reason where I just wasn't feeling it anymore, or I think I'm going to stay where I am because I'm comfortable, then this is why you should do it on a phone call. Try and dig a little bit deeper to understand where is that expression coming from. It's coming from a deeper emotion, and you'll discover the real reasons why that they didn't accept the offer, and then you can use that going way back to the start in your sourcing to better target the types of candidates that will accept the offer. So, in summary, I know that that is a lot. We have identified 5 stages: the applications, the submitted candidates responding to you once they've applied, the submissions getting booked for the interview, showing up for the interview, and then accepting the offer. And I want to encourage you to look at how your performance measures up and then split it up into these 5 stages so that you can decide where you need to focus your efforts and do 2023 better than 2022. Before we go, we have a few more positive factors. When you're working with a vendor, the engagement of the decision maker is very helpful for that vendor, because we're able to talk to the decision maker about the holistic performance, including the KPIs and the monetary value that this is delivering. And it really helps that vendor stay on track and know what they need to do to keep your business and win more. And without that voice, it's hard for vendors to really figure out what is the real thing that I need to do, except just give me more candidates. And I want to give praise to a couple of clients. We have Overlake Medical Center in Seattle, McLaren Healthcare in Detroit. Both of these have very engaged decision makers who've really helped us recognize what their needs are from the campaign, their deeper needs. Recognizing the investment and value of each candidate and importance of following up is a useful strategy to get your recruiters or hiring managers more engaged and working more rapidly after you receive a candidate. If you're able to say, this is what we spent on our job ads per channel, and this is what the cost per candidate is, then that application has a monetary value to them that pushes them to take action. Again, this is for working with a vendor. If they provide you tracking software, regularly updating that will help them understand what they need to do. And then honesty and transparency all around regarding campaign performance and required improvements. Being very upfront and saying, this isn't good enough, this is what it needs to be better, will help all parties understand what they need to do. And one for us really is trust. So whenever you engage a vendor, remember why you engage them. And if they give you advice, trust them to know how to implement their system. The final point here would be both parties should share their own insights into the market and take them on board. So when working with vendors, you're working with someone that has a broad perspective, and they probably work with organizations very similar to you. So take their advice on board and share your own insights into your organization to help them be better advised too. So what we would like to do now is move the discussion onto Zoom. Patrick's going to share the link. If anybody has any questions for us or wants to engage in any discussion, then feel free to join the Zoom link, and we can follow up in there, tell you more about what we do, or learn more about what you do, or simply get to know one another.
Yeah, Adam, and just before we do that, I'd love to let people know our next webinar, and we host these every 2 or 3 weeks. Our next webinar will be on March 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And with International Women's Day coming up, our colleagues Rachel and Ryan at Direct Shifts were interested in having a conversation about women in healthcare and how we can think about supporting women who work in healthcare and addressing and identifying, recognizing all the different roles women play in life at work and at home, and how those roles interact and affect each other, and how think about ways we can support them. So we'll be doing that on March 1st at 1 Eastern. And if you go to the same link I posted earlier, which is my online business card, applechathealthcare.com/Patrick, you'll be able to find the link to find out about all of our upcoming webinars and past webinars as well. And I also shared in the chat the Zoom link that we're going to move into as soon as we conclude this call. So hope to see you there.
Yeah, great. Thank you,
Great.
everybody, for joining. And we will see you in the Zoom if you'd like to join.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.